Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon podcast. How are you? Hope you're all doing very well. It's nice to say those words. It's been a while. I feel like I haven't recorded with you for ages. I've been in the forest.
Yeah, well, how was your time away? Did you get the message that you were searching for in the forest?
Oh, the message I was searching for in the forest. It sounds like a euphemism. I literally was in a forest, to be clear. I went camping for the first time since I was like 12 or something, and it was really nice. It was really nice.
I actually love camping.
I feel like you're a camping guy. I see that for you.
I am a camping guy. I mean, I don't go as often as I want, but yeah, like I like roughing it, doing the whole 9 yards, fire, camping out there. It's just something about that. And I do it with my boys a lot. Like we go out and we'll just rent a weekend and we'll rent a campsite and we'll just go out, whatever we have.
How often?
I'd say every 4 to 6 months, I would say.
Wow. Yeah.
If we can, because, if everybody doesn't know, I'm really busy with the wedding right now. I mean, you guys know that I got engaged, but now we're planning things seriously. So that stuff's really busy on the odd weekend that's free. But yeah, camping is so good. I feel like everybody should camp at some point.
Yeah,
you know how everybody
100%.
has that like meditation or that way to center you? There's nothing like primal food, water, and I'm convinced catching something, like I don't know about you, but I fish. So even when we camp, we'll bring some trail mix and we'll bring some dehydrated meals just in case, because you don't want to be stupid. But like when you catch something and then you eat it and you're camping, it tastes 10 times better. There's something about, I'm a man, 100%.
Yeah. You were saying it there. George is currently, what you trying to do? Trying to finish a PhD. You're trying to get married. You're trying to buy a house. You're trying to put out good football content, lads. So it's a finding time for camping. Fair play. Yeah, I mean, I don't mean that guy who goes camping once and says, everyone should do it. But there's something really like reconnected with nature. I felt really refreshed after. It was great. Welcome back to the Cannon podcast. Hello, waffling. We're going to talk football. It's international. It's the international break. We've got time for waffling. Yes, let's get into it. It's been a weird international break, and I feel like we say that every time. But I feel like this first one in the calendar. The first international break always, because it feels like we just got started and then we just immediately go back to it. So it's weird. So you want to start doing like, season review so far. It's only been 3 games. Everyone's worried about like XG already. We're like, up to these ridiculous conversations. But we are going to have a bit of a chat about the first 3 games. So obviously the win against Wolves, the win against Aston Villa, which I think is huge, by the way, like a really, really important win. And then, the kind of the down feeling against Brighton, it kind of left us all with a bit of a bitter taste in our mouth. But that's 7 points from 9. I want to get into sort of individual performances in a second. I think I want to talk David Raya and Kai Havertz. But sort of so far in the season, 7 points out of 9, a big win away at Villa Park. The Brighton game, it right now in the sequencing of things, it feels a bit rubbish. But I think we're going to reflect on that probably, as just one of those games. How you feeling so far? Just, very, very early.
Look, I think from my perspective, when I look at the press, I gain confidence. I thought that was the best part of Arsenal.
That is the most George Voutsas thing I've ever heard.
It's so niche, but it's like, I get confidence in making sure that we do things that were our bread and butter. And as long as we're doing those things, the experiments that I see that maybe don't work at the beginning of the season never worry me, because every coach does it. The first, I'd say, 10 to 12 games of the season, there's a reason why Pep starts slow. And the reason is he's trying things for the run that we all come to expect, which is I'm going to win every single game for 25 games and secure a title. So the first little bit of a season, it's always about measuring, feeling each other out, and feeling the league out. That's what I feel like. It's that first day of school, and we're leading to the point when you've developed your click. And our click normally happens in October to November. So I try to temper my reactionary things where things I don't like. So for example, the usage of our 8s are things that I don't like. I think there's a discussion to be had there. That's something that we've done 2 seasons running. That's not a coincidence to me. Both seasons running, we've had both 8s high and wide. We found ways to become more successful and more consistent by not doing that, but yet we've chosen, upon reflection, to return back to the thing that didn't make sense for us. There's something to talk about there. There must be a reason why. And then I'm looking at the Brighton game and all. I think there's an asterisk there for so many reasons that we don't need to go through. I mean, look, those games happen, but also those refereeing decisions don't happen, ironically, throughout the season. For as much as they're big in our
that's a
mind,
one-off. Yeah,
that's a one-off. That's like a Newcastle.
that's
Look,
that's a Brentford. Forget to draw the lines. Yeah.
And it's like, look, you can't control those things. So like, taking out of my anger, I hated it, but I understand that's a solitary data point in a season that, there's nothing to get upset about. But yeah, I do think that I look at the season. The one thing I did reflect on and think, wow, this league is strong. I started looking at the transfer window, and as soon as it shut, I started saying, okay, how many people in this league do I think can fight for Europe? I'm not really concerned about Arsenal. I feel that Arsenal and City are having their own league. And not to sound arrogant, but that's its own league to me. And then the rest of the table, I'm starting to think, shit, I'm not sure if I'm convinced on the relegation, by the way. I'm not sure if I'm convinced on the people that are fighting for Europe. I genuinely think there's 10 to 12 teams that all have a reason to say, I could be in Europe and why. I look at West Ham. I look at Brighton. I look at Palace. I look at Newcastle. I look at the traditional top six. I mean, just there, I've named you at least 10 teams. I mean, that's also ignoring the surprise packages of the season that you always get. Like, how will Ipswich perform in the Premier League? How will Fulham perform with their own very good manager and very good signings? I just think I'm looking at it and I'm saying this is one of the most competitive leagues I've seen in a while.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Liverpool as something that has shocked me in terms of how quickly Arne Slot's tactics have been able to be implemented by Liverpool. There's something to be said. He's made Gravenberch a 6. I'm going to repeat that for people. He's made Gravenberch a 6 for them, who looks very good. Now, 3 games, will that continue? I just think that at the beginning of a season, there's always surprises, there's always letdowns, and there's always the things that you look for to gain strength. And I've seen it from Arsenal, so I have no real worries from that perspective. I have a question from Mikel. Why are you going with the 8 thing again? We saw that it didn't work last year, but you're doing it again. Why? Instead of me saying, critiquing you, but why? What's the thought process? What do you want to achieve?
Yeah.
And then I look at the league. And I think that's what everybody does. And, we come back from this international break on really big hits, mate. You've got the derby, you've got City coming up. Looking at our fixtures, I really think you start to contextualize Brighton as okay if you do well in games that you're fearful of. And this is going to be a conversation that we're going to have all season. As soon as we drop points outside a team named Liverpool and Manchester City, it's a conversation. And that's
100%.
how small the margins are.
Yeah, no, I think well said on lots of that, mate. I think what's exciting though is you mentioned such a competitive league, and it really is. Like, and I'm looking at what Slot's doing. Like someone like Eric Ten Hag, we mock. Eric Ten Hag isn't. People say he's a bum or he's an idiot, whatever. Eric Ten Hag isn't an idiot. He's just coming up against the Premier League, where every team is unbelievably prepared, unbelievably well coached, unbelievably well physically, able and adaptable, and all these sorts of things. You have Hertzler and Iraola at mid-table clubs. It's a mental league, and the reason that's so exciting for me is no matter what's happened in the last couple of years, no one's had an answer for our press. No one's had an answer for our out-possession stuff. No one's had an answer for Bukayo Saka. No one's really had an answer for Martin Ødegaard particularly. So while we have a bit of a bitter taste in our mouth at the moment because of the Brighton game, I think you're right to kind of stress like the things that we want to hold on to. And that is exciting moving forward, and trying to put things in perspective and trying to be like, not panic and just go, look, those happens. Those things are one-offs. I also want to pick up on something you said about the 8s, because it's the right way around of thinking. I think sometimes when we see things going wrong in the team, this is me as well, I do this. We go, why is he doing that? Why is he doing that? In a kind of like attacking way. Like that's not working. He's an idiot in that sense, whatever. With a man who knows football as well as, and also all Premier League managers, but with a man who knows football as well as Mikel Arteta, I think it is always the other way around, or trying to think about it the other way around. Okay, he's doing this for a reason. There must be a reason in the Brighton game Martin Ødegaard's not dropping out the block. There must be a reason. So let's look for that. Now, if we look for that and we think, that doesn't feel quite right, or we maybe think we've got the answer, then we can have a conversation. But I think, it's remembering the level of football conversations that we are in and triumphing in so many times, which is so exciting. I want to come to some individual performances. I've been super impressed with Kai Havertz. We've done the forward conversation to death, but I think if you listen to both of what we were saying, well, I don't want to speak for you, but what I was saying certainly was this was not a conversation about getting a centre forward to pull Kai Havertz out of the team, nor was it a conversation about getting a forward who's going to, it's not a comment on Kai Havertz, it's a comment on the skills gap we felt in the team, right? But the more I watch Kai Havertz over the last year, the confidence I see him, I watched the comp for him playing for Germany. There's a force to him now. There's I'm sorry, it's the word, but there's an aura. There's a confidence. There's a snap in the action. He took someone on in the box, George. He tried to go past them. Who is this man? Who are you? What have you done with Kai Havertz? I was watching it going, you tried to beat him at 6'4". Like, what? Like, that's not who you are. If we can unlock that, if he can be this Berbatov, cold, ruthless finisher with the movement he has, with the quality he has, like, I'm getting excited. I'm such a nerd. I'm getting excited thinking about what Kai Havertz, because what is he, 24, 25? If we keep Kai Havertz around, he keeps growing, keeps building as a centre forward, there's such an exciting player there because everything's there. The only thing I will say as a centre forward, and I think this is really, it's not necessarily a problem that I see, but I think a problem that fans have with him. My friend Piers describes it as this, and I love it as a description. He says, Kai Havertz finishes with a whisper. And I was like, you get a screamer from the outside of the box. Kai Havertz finishes as always whispers. And I was like, that's really true. And I think sometimes fans want him to put his foot through it. I don't necessarily know whether that's what he needs to do. But if he can develop on that conviction in his actions, I think fans will just start to go, oh my God, I think we found the centre forward that we were looking for, because what else is there?
Well, I think the one word that you talk about, which is what I've kind of talked about with Kai Havertz as aggressiveness in possession, but you use the word conviction. What you're trusting with Kai Havertz right now is that you believe he believes in his actions.
Yeah.
Like that for me is the big difference. And I think that's the growth. That's what we always felt like we needed from him, but it's what we're starting to see a lot more. And we're seeing him trust in his ability as opposed to saying, hey, am I doing what you told me to do right? And there was a little bit of that throughout his career, and which is understandable. Look, the debate with Kai Havertz, I think, will always be a case of you defining the objective. And if you can ask him to perform a role in the team, and what is that role, and what you're going to judge him on, that's something that I think can apply to a multitude of players. So what I mean by that, not to get super meta, is, okay, Raheem Sterling, for example. It's another player that we're going to have question marks about. But what is Raheem Sterling's objective? Okay, if you're asking him again to be the superstar X factor forward that finishes all of his chances, is that fair? I don't think it is. Was it ever fair to make Kai Havertz fix a hole that the team lacked? If that isn't him, I don't think so. And so the one thing that I'm looking at with Kai Havertz is I'm open to learning. I'm open to learning more. When you talk about your friend saying he finishes like he's in a whisper, I agree a lot with that, but I think it kind of underpins this whole idea about conviction. It really does. And when you're looking for a killer can be a quiet leader, but they still kill you.
Yeah. You
can have a silent killer. You can have a loud killer. There's a lot of types of killers, but ultimately they kill you. And, I think the trust in me being able to say, Kai Havertz will kill you, is something that I'm still looking for the answer for. And he can find his own journey for how he achieves that. I don't think it has to be through a particular skill, action. Kai Havertz will develop and become that on his own terms. I still will have that debate. That's the only thing. But I'm seeing a lot more confidence. I'm seeing somebody that's willing to take control of his own actions and be aggressive in possession. And those are the things that I was asking for last season. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's doing it on his own terms, I think is the right way to put it. And yeah, there's like a cold-bloodedness to him. And I'm just looking through his record from away at Burnley last year in the 5-0, goal, Newcastle, goal and assist, Sheffield United, goal and assist, Brentford, goal, City, miss, Luton assist, goal and assist against Brighton, 2 misses against Aston Villa and Wolves, 2 goals against Chelsea, goal and assist against Tottenham, miss against Bournemouth, assist against United, goal against Everton, and then obviously this season he's got the goal. He's got 2 goals and 1 assist. And for me, it's like at some point when do we as a fan base start to say that's enough of a sample? And it's a question mark, because there will be people listening to this who aren't convinced by Kai Havertz as centre forward and are sort of seeing it as a stopgap, or we go and get the Isak next summer. And maybe so. But I also think there is it's like, what's that thing? Don't let perfect be the enemy of good, or whatever that phrase is. It's like, we've got this brilliant thing going on at the moment at centre forward. And while I think we've sort of arrived, I don't want to do another one of my relationship analogies, but like you've sort of, you don't know what you've got till it's gone, or, all that sort of stuff. You're kind of striving for more and you miss what's in front of you. And I think what we're seeing with Kai Havertz is really exciting. He's on his own journey. Who knows how it's going to work out? We might be sat here in 6 months saying absolutely Kai Havertz is one of the best centre forwards on the planet, or we're sat here saying it hasn't quite worked out. I think we still need something else. But either way, what we have right now in the present moment is really exciting with Kai Havertz. And I can't wait to see how it develops, because I'm watching him and I love it. I love what he's doing right now.
I think what part of here, let me ask you something. For as much as you're loving Kai Havertz, are you going to sit here and tell me that he's one of the top 5 center forwards in the world?
No.
Can you?
No.
And
I can't.
Or let's put it this way: in 6 months, are you confident about saying those words?
No.
if you were a betting man, right? Would you?
Yeah.
So
but is that fair? Is kind of my point. Is like because of the sample he's got.
Well, 100%, and but in 6 months we're going to have those conversations where, okay, let's say he continues the exact same thing Kai Havertz is doing right now with the record you just listed, and in 6 months, are you saying that he's one of the top 5 center forwards in the world?
Well, and this is why I'm excited about the conviction thing, because I think what we're missing is that feeling that, like, I think what you want with the strikers, you just want that security. You want that, like, they'll score. It. But that takes time to build. It's the same with a goalkeeper. You like the security of knowing, like, no, he's got us. Like, he'll be okay. Someone's going through one-on-one against Alisson. He's done it a million times. He'll do it a million times again. But that takes time as a reputation to build. So that's why I'm excited, but with trepidation with Kai Havertz. Yeah.
Because by the way, like, I'm not doing it to almost catch you out. I'm in the same boat. And you know what it is with me is I really think that it's because it's going to be mixed with this wider conversation, mate, of, are you saying Arsenal will win the league? This is going to be the background noise to every discussion on every player that's a question mark, every scenario that's a question mark. When you're telling me, Raheem Sterling, do you love the signing? It's because it's saying, are you saying that's what wins us the league? Are you saying that, this new formation? Well, exactly. And so I think it's even less about Kai Havertz as an individual conversation. We're going to have to separate things that we talk about football in the moment with a player from this Arsenal winning category. Yeah. Because that for me is really the underpinning of the question. Do you trust Kai Havertz to win you trophies? That's going to be the question when you start making the transitions between this. Yeah. Now, look, as far as I'm concerned with Kai Havertz, I think that asking him to be, I guess it depends on what you see him as. It really does. I don't ever, and I will go on record, I don't think Kai Havertz, while he'll always get very good output, will never be the killer a team needs. I think he's always going to be the person that helps a team, that is at his core, a facilitator. And you facilitate him brilliantly, he'll do really well. So, for example, if I'm looking at the best strikers, or even forget the striker comment, the best attackers that I've seen in my lifetime, I look at R9, Thierry Henry, Robin van Persie, Aguero. I'm looking at Cavani, Aubameyang, all these different types of center forwards. Do I think Kai Havertz fits into the killer of those molds? I don't think he does. But I do think he's this 9.5, this annoying hybrid where he doesn't fit a category. And as long as we keep trying to put him in a category, he will fail your expectations of what's traditional. So I need to reevaluate how I feel about him, how I judge him. And my judgment won't be, do you finish moments? My judgment will be, do you make those better around you, whilst at the same time showing me things that you haven't shown me. And as long as you meet that criteria, then you earn your place in the team. As far as replacement goes, that's a wider conversation, and that needs something on larger reflection.
Yeah, and I can't be bothered with the transfer conversation right now. I'm so glad football's back. I was so done with transfer conversations. But you know, I think the thing you said at the end there, that what he was showing us something we haven't seen before. I think we are beginning to see that, and that's so exciting for me. So yeah, looking forward to seeing that progress. And another player who's been really exciting in this early period is David Raya. David Raya has had a brilliant start to the season. By the way, not doing anything particularly different from what he did last year. And this is not to plug myself and to self-aggrandize here, but I made a video on the Different Knock plug, essentially talking about players that I thought would grow this year. And I'm sorry to say, my point was this is going to happen. David Raya is going to do the exact same thing, and people are going to just catch up. That's basically all I think has happened, really, in terms of, and he's had some big moments, and those are really important for people to go and watch on Match of the Day and go, oh wow, that's that sort of thing. I think David Raya, because of the type of goalkeeper he is, because of the impact he has on the team, he's always from an external perspective going to be. He's going to need those bigger moments more than other goalkeepers. I think someone like an Edison, especially if you're an Edison and you're in a 5-time Premier League winning team, you can I'm not particularly commenting on Edison, but if you're in a team like that, removing Edison, you can get away with a couple of things. I think Raya, for me, is basically doing what he did last year, and has had a couple of kind of flashpoint moments to show us, wow, this is a unbelievable shot stopper. I think his shot stopping is like his post shot XG numbers are really, really good. They haven't always been amazing, but they've been really good to start the season. But yeah, we've also had those kind of flashpoint moments, but it goes beyond that for me, and it's all the supporting things, the putting the foot on the ball, the conversations you can see he's having, the authority, which I don't think he always had, certainly at points early last year. I think he sort of gained it by the end. The connection with the crowd, all those things, you can see him celebrating with the crowd now. I was about to call it audience, but there is an audience there for him, and I think he's beginning to enjoy it a little bit. When I'm watching him now, I'm sort of seeing him play up to it a little bit in that kind of Ramsdale way, which I think is so exciting. Thoughts on David Raya so far this season, but yeah, for me, like, there is a bit of change, but actually he's doing all the great stuff that we've spoken about before, and people are just waking up to it from an external perspective, because Arsenal fans knew.
It's so tough, because if you actually analyze his numbers in his last year at Brentford, he was one of the best shot stoppers in the league. If you actually wanted to talk pure numbers. And then, let's talk facts. When he entered, there was a period of establishing yourself in the team. We had a very awkward situation that I still will on this day say that Arsenal handled very poorly in terms of the transition. It didn't help Raya, and it didn't help Ramsdale. And there was a period when Raya was coming in. I always felt like he was trying to be the same keeper, but the issue is, he was having some clangers. Let's have it right. Up until I'd say about mid-November to December, there was a good period where David Raya was also making mistakes that were pretty clear, and it wasn't a fault of his own. When you're unclear and vague about a very important situation in terms of your number one goalkeeper, I think it breeds that. And as long as you're not holding your end of the bargain, where clearly Mikel internally had made the decision you were number one, but publicly hadn't, there's scrutiny that comes with it after you've replaced your goalkeeper of the season of last year. That entire situation, there was a lot. And I think there's even a wider conversation to be had about what we did with our goalkeepers. By the way, not just in terms of the first team, but what we tried to do in the academy. We had an entire goalkeeping shuffle, top to bottom. It was a complete redo. I think Raya deserves all the credit in the world. I was never doubting his ability to maybe get to this point. What I think I've always doubted is, okay, are we going to have this competition between goalkeepers? Is that really going to hold true? I think it could have.
Do you think that's a fan thing, though? Because I remember us having those conversations, and I suppose what that is us trying to make it make sense. because it didn't make sense at the time. Do you think that was ever really a conversation genuinely within, like, but I'm sure Mikel would have said to Ryan Ramsdale, like, you're in competition, but would Mikel and Iñaki Kanya have been having conversations saying, let's see? I guarantee they were just like, well, it's Raya.
Well, internally they must have, but at the same token, Iñaki Kanya and Mikel Arteta, look at their history of paying for goalkeepers. Like, look at the position, not just this year. The amount of change and overture that position has had in the last 3 years is crazy. There's not been stability there. So for as much as I'm feeling like maybe internally they had that during the season, I mean, that spot has been tumultuous for 3 years. You know, it's arguably been the most tumultuous position that we've had in our team. Bar maybe left back, really. So while I think I had that, and, you know, I think David Raya is going to benefit from it, he'll reach a new level in perception, because then he won't have the 4-month betting in period of am I trusted, am I not? And that whole conversation, now that we've moved Aaron on, by the way, permanently, you've closed the chapter, it's David Raya's team. There is a security in him knowing that. He may have always been told that, but David Raya for the first 4 months didn't look like the David Raya post-December. And so I think that authority, especially in that position, which is more solitary than any position in the sport right now. It's important. You need to have control of your house.
Yeah.
In that manner.
And you need the respect. You need the respect of your teammates and stuff to be able to do what you need to do. Okay, here's a question that I hadn't thought about till now. Do you think there's a goalkeeper in the world who Mikel would replace for Raya? And if so, do you think he'd do it?
Yeah. He's done it every single 18 months, if you really want to be real with it.
I look at Saliba and I'm like, I can't imagine Mikel looks at any other centre back in the world. I can't imagine that. I look at, even if he thinks there's stuff for Saliba to improve on because of his age and because of what he is to this team, I think that's what it is. Saka's the face of the project. It's never happening. Martin Ødegaard is never getting replaced while Mikel's here. I'm sorry. He might be able to move around, but it's not happening. Declan Rice isn't happening. But Raya feels like that fifth pillar. But I do wonder. I'd love to know if Iñaki and Mikel are like, if one of these three became available, we'd do it.
Well, let me ask you, why is Juan Garcia being the one that was the main number 2 target that we all know we couldn't do?
For 27 million. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money for a second choice.
Let me ask you, do you see Mikel buying a £50 million centre back? £50 million right winger?
No.
Like, from a goalkeeping perspective, Juan Garcia would have represented one of the goalkeeping records in terms of transfers. So I also can't tell you the honest to God truth, because when we had Leno, we had Martinez. And then when we had Martinez, you know, we developed Aaron Ramsdale. And when we had Aaron Ramsdale, who was player of the season, we got David Raya. And then when we got David Raya, and we knew we got David Raya, we were still looking for a number 2 that was £26 million. So the evidence, look, I want to be with you and say, yeah, he's a cornerstone. It's not happening. But in 3 years, I haven't seen that. And look, is that right? Is it not right? I don't know. Who am I to decide? I personally, this is what I believe on squad management. I believe in clear communication. I believe in there being a hierarchy. And I do believe in communicating that hierarchy clearly. So, for example, if you say you feel the goalkeeping position should be a case of there being no number 1 and people should share the minutes, you honor that decision. And you do that, and you back it up. If you don't believe that, and you believe that there is a hierarchy, for example, Bukayo Saka will play. He's one of the best players in the world. David Raya is one of the best goalkeepers in the world. He will play. Communicate that. And to whoever comes in, you understand, listen, I will give you an opportunity to shine, but you must understand who's in front of you. And I feel like we don't have that conversation with players that we 100% trust. I think that's a conversation in players that we're not sure of. Again, you mentioned Saliba, Rice, Saka. There's a reason why you're not sitting here saying, well, why don't we go get Rodri? Why don't we get Romeo Lavia? Why don't we go get X, Y, and Z? Because you know what you have with Rice. There's a reason why people are saying we need help for Saka, but no one's telling me I need to be in there for the Estevios of this world, the Cole Palmer. we don't need to do that because we trust who's there.
Yeah.
There's got to be a level of that. And I do feel that we're moving towards a model that maybe promotes change. And so that's where I'm at with it. I think that Juan Garcia was a very interesting move. And I can't honestly sit there and tell you that wasn't in mind to replace David Raya in 2 years.
Yeah. Well, we don't know, but that's the point. We don't know. We know we're not signing a right winger. Do you know what I mean? That's the thing. So, it's an interesting one, and one we'll continue to think about. And also, I can't help but feel, we always say this about goalkeepers, right? But I can't help but feel like, even, we're obviously very limited in terms of what we know about the outfield players. We're even more limited in terms of the goalkeepers and what they're really looking for, what they're really training for, what the conversations they're really having, and what they might want Raya to improve on, because I'm sure they will be having conversations about that, and if they think they can improve. And look, if they feel they can improve the team, then go and do it. Like, I'm up for that, but I agree that there's like a stability conversation that also needs to be factored into that. What you're saying about communication, I hear that in terms of clear communication, but I don't always know whether that's possible, because also things change. Like, maybe the case was when they saw Raya on the market and they said, yeah, they actually are going to battle it out, and we'll have him on loan and we won't activate the buy option if Ramsdale beats him out. And he didn't. Like, we don't know that. We can guess, but like, we don't know that. So it's really hard, and sometimes you want your manager to play a game as well to get the best for the team. Ultimately, we've improved on Ramsdale, like that's what we've done. So yeah, I don't know how. Like, I know you said you felt the management of it was poor. I don't know how I feel about that, because I'm like, I think it probably wasn't managed particularly well, but equally I don't know. It's like, I've asked this before on a couple of streams and stuff. Like, and people have said, oh, it's poorly managed, and I've always said, like, I hear that, and I don't think we maximised everything, because, like, realistically, what we would have loved was a £60 million Ramsdale sale and Raya coming in. Like, I think that feels like it would have been a better way of doing things. But knowing the information we knew at each time, I'm not sure what the club could have done different. If they only knew Raya was going to be available at the end of the summer, and they felt that was the best thing to do, then you had to do it. No, so I don't know. I can't. Basically, what I'm trying to say is I can't paint a picture where I go, the club should have absolutely done that because they knew that, and I know they knew that because of X. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, part of the problem is, for me, if you're looking for a different style, the current style isn't something you believe in. And the contract that we gave Aaron Ramsdale at that point, at the beginning of the summer, wasn't I'm not sure.
Yeah, that was we are sure. We're rewarding.
We are sure. Yeah, so that's where I'm at with it on the clear messaging front. And I probably apply the same logic, and I'm trying to in other positions. We're clearly after a forward. Everybody recognizes Bukayo Saka cannot be used the way he's been used, right? Why is everybody talking about depth and Pedro Neto and whatnot and those types of signings? They're not talking about buying, I don't know. Again, this comes into how much you rate these players, but they're not saying to go buy a Cole Palmer. They're not saying to go buy X, Y, and Z. The point is, there was a hierarchy. You establish Bukayo Saka as one of the best players in the world, and your depth understands that. I feel like the number 2 position as a goalkeeper, we haven't even talked about Neto. I don't feel like I've even got your opinion on Neto as a player and even the idea. But when you've got a very experienced number 2 that's older, do you prefer that, or do you prefer Juan Garcia, which is a upcoming prospect that you feel will take over the number 2? How do you balance growth there? And it's really a question of squad depth. What do you prioritize in squad depth, and when? And that's the question that I think they're all weighing up. You know what I mean? I just think the communication has been unclear. For example, to go from Juan Garcia to Neto is a pivot because of the transfer circumstance, but I really think it sends a very different message to the squad in general, especially the goalkeeping department. Like, if I'm after an experienced number 2, it's very different to me competing with a bright, up-and-coming Ligue 1. By the way, he was one of the best goalkeepers in Ligue 1. Like, this is a guy that a lot of people are after. And when you get that sends a different message to me than the experienced number 2 that will fill in that you trust when you need it. I guess, like, they're different.
I hear that. I do hear that. I think ultimately all these like messaging and the conversations we had about like the forward, like the box efficiency stuff. It's all, you can create a conversation around. You can go, well, that you could, okay, let's just take the Joan Garcia and Neto thing. You can, if you're trying to put a positive spin on it, you could say, well, it's great that the club had other targets and they quickly acted and they obviously couldn't get that. We're not overspending. Great, well done, Arsenal. You've done the transfer market. Or if you're looking at the opposite way, we're all over the place. We don't know who we want. We've not got the right target. We aren't ambitious enough. You can spin it any way you want. So it's hard to say. But ultimately, the clear communication, I hear that, but I just think because we don't know all of the internal conversations, we're only getting like the feet, like the sort of the ripples in the water rather than the stone. You know what I mean? So it's like we're trying to work out how big the stone was from the ripples, and we could be right, but we also don't know how far out we are in the lake. What an analogy! Bloody hell, on the fly.
Here, let me ask you something. I feel like, can you close your eyes and tell me what goalkeeping target will look like?
No.
Forget the name.
but also because, well, as in,
like
okay, I could, but as in, I also am aware just from the goalkeeper. Okay, from my complete amateur basic, someone who's going to be comfortable on the ball, someone who's going to be comfortable stepping into the second centre back type thing, probably someone who's strong on the cross claims, probably someone who restarts quickly. But that's all kind of informed by Raya. The thing is, it's the development of the position that you can't predict.
For sure. I guess, but you've described traits that I think are really important in terms of building you a list. Justin Bigelow fit that.
Yeah.
Alvaro Valles fits that. There's players on the market that fit that. For example, I don't think what you've talked about describes Aaron Ramsdale. Brilliant keeper in his own right, but he's a very different person. Neto, I don't know if he hits all the things that you mentioned, but what I do know is that he's an experienced goalkeeper that we can trust when filling in.
Yeah.
But all the targets that got linked in terms of Juan Garcia, Justin Bigelow, I look at the length.
Yeah.
They're Raya-esque. So I guess like the question becomes, just to close the segment off, because we could talk about this forever, is Raya a pillar? I think what he offers is a pillar. Is Raya himself a pillar? I don't know. Now the question becomes, can you apply that to Declan Rice, William Saliba, and Bukayo Saka? I will vehemently argue with you, you can't. The things that those people offered, I think, are unique, but they're individual. So what's a team role need, and what's an individual non-negotiable? That's a question that's up to you guys to debate.
This is why you're a world-class podcaster, George. It's a very good question. Because you're okay, but you're looking at Raya and you're going, well, what he brings to the team is traits, and then you look at like Bukayo Saka and like what he brings to the team is he's Bukayo Saka. Cool, interesting. Right, let's move on. Actually, I'm going to come back to that because I want to get some predictions about what we feel of some goals and assist numbers. We haven't really done many predictions because I sort of hate doing predictions before the window's closed, and then by the time the window's closed, it's like no one cares about predictions. So, but I'm interested in trying to get some numbers out of us for goals and assists for a few players. So maybe we'll come back to that later. Arsenal had 4 nominees for the Ballon d'Or in 2024, George. I think that news came out since we last podcasted, which is, the news cycle moves so quickly, but it was since our last main podcast. Declan Rice, William Saliba, Bukayo Saka, and Martin Ødegaard. Interesting, the four players that we just mentioned. Yes, and not David Raya. Although was he nominated for the Yassine?
I think he was nominated.
Probably was, yeah. Okay, so we're talking about our arse. Firstly, before we sort of get onto the meta conversation, how amazing, like how far we've come in such a short period of time. I think I tweeted out like I remember being here when Danny Ceballos and David Luiz were having training ground fights about 3 years ago, and here we are. That we do sometimes forget, and this is kind of comes back to the top of the pod, like we can get lost in the moment and in, Chris Kavanagh's stupid decisions or whatever it might be. But what you said, we are in a mini league with the best Premier League team of all time. That's it. And that's a fact. So
how many did they have too, by the way? I know the answer.
I think they're less than us. I think. So, it's incredibly exciting. I think sometimes we when you're behind it all, you're sort of back in 2020, you're looking at these lists and you're going, God, like we're just so far away from it. when the lists come out, you go, well, of course, you don't spend much time. But sometimes I think it's worth just having a little moment to go, it's such a brilliant indication of where this project is. It's such a brilliant indication of what we're getting right. And we know that. But it's also this kind of perception as well of Arsenal that I think when Declan Rice signed, I saw an interview with him from like November. He said, like, one of the things we speak about is we want to change how people talk about Arsenal. Do you think that's happened? Do you think people have changed how they talk about Arsenal from an external perspective? Because I think we have a sense from inside the fan base, but I do feel things have shifted. I think people see us, or are at least beginning to see us, as a serious football team again. And we've known how good we are, as in, or could potentially be, under Mikel Arteta since probably New Year's Day 2022. Like, that was the time when I was going, oh my goodness me, this isn't just, you know, a decent team on a decent run. This is a potentially era. This is an era potentially. But do you feel that external perception? It's hard to say, isn't it, from social media and conversations or whatever. But I feel it. I do feel it.
I think these are the type of things that validate your individual feelings about how much you feel about our football club, right? Like, not to say, like, when people say, well, what's the process? Oh, are you saying the process is getting nominated for the Ballon d'Or? No, but I am. What it really is as an individual fan, we've seen the steps that we've taken. We've seen the markers, and we study the XG. We study, you know, how many goals we've scored, all the records that we set last season. So we know we're good, and we've been shouting that we're good, but we've had to shout we're good because everyone told us we're crap for 5 years running. And so there's this pushback. And then once you get some of these media things that they start to say, actually, how many times has Mikel Arteta won Manager of the Month, and it's approaching the same amount of times that Arsene Wenger was nominated? Then you start saying, whoa. Then when you start seeing some of those statistics in terms of what Bukayo Saka has been able to do in terms of on an individual level, but also how he's recognized in England, and he's now joined the leadership group, you know, and then you start saying, okay, from a Ballon d'Or nomination perspective, we've now equaled Manchester City's nominee list. And the only team to beat both of us is Madrid, with only one more nomination. Then you start to say, okay, it's now shifted where I no longer have to cite XG in these documents. I can say, look at what everybody else is saying in terms of how they
have to go look at the field tilt numbers. You go,
yes,
Ballon d'Or nominee.
Ballon d'Or. And so now the next step is people won't cross that bridge until they respond with, what have you won? And we get to say, in your face. That hill won't happen until you win. But I definitely feel that the way that people talk about Arsenal in terms of not just how good we are, but how well run we are. That's actually something that I've loved to see as an evolution. And I think that's more important because that's sustainable.
Yeah, and then you kind of buy yourself like a little bit of grace from fans, probably people like us, to be honest, who you get. Like my conclusion to the window was, I'm confused. I think 5 years ago we could have done the same thing, and I would have gone, I don't like, what the F are we doing? And I think a lot more people, but actually what people are going, what I see is either a lot of trust, and obviously there's, you know, some people saying, you know, this is a ridiculous window, we're terrible, but a lot of people going, I wonder what we're doing. And that's a really interesting response, because it's like, it's essentially, it's that thing we spoke about earlier in the pod, right? It's like, not why is Mikel using his eights like that? He's an idiot. It's why is Mikel using his eights like that? There will be a reason, and I'm curious, and that's like a different thing, and you kind of buy yourself that. But yeah, I think like, yeah, it's nice, and I think that there's a kind of another conversation to this where I think we're both like quite ambitious fans compared. And I do think, I don't know where this comes from. Maybe it's like an international thing, or like maybe fans who grew up in a certain era. I don't know. I'd love to like see some numbers, but like what people expect Arsenal to be. And sometimes, you know, like in conversations, it is interesting where people see the club, because I want us to stay here and establish ourselves here. Like that's what I want. I want us to be in the conversation. And I think we can be. I think we can establish ourselves as the London club. My ambition is to be in the Champions League every single year, compete for the title every single year. I think we are a big enough club, in a big enough league to be able to do that if we make the right decisions. And obviously that's ambition. It doesn't mean you can do it, but I think we should be aiming for that. But there's some people who are like, we can't sign him. He'll be on over 300k a week. And I'm like, there's a disconnect here. There's a disconnect between 4 players being in the Ballon d'Or and and who they're up against, Vinny Jr. and Mbappe and all these guys. And then some people saying that's great, but we can't, I'm worried about him coming in and kind of ruining our club culture, even if he's the perfect guy, because, he's going to ask for a little bit higher than the wages I'm willing to give, or we can't sign that player, or we can't do this, or we can't expand the stadium. It's that feeling of like, I don't know what it is, conservatism or something, or trying to hold on to something. I really want Arsenal to establish themselves at this level, and that is going to take some major financial investment. That's going to take some big decisions. That's going to take some big sales, by the way, some big sales. But I don't know, like I suppose this Ballon d'Or thing, it feels to me like we're at a bit of a crossroads. Like we could look back in 10 years and go, what a brilliant era of Arsenal that happened. And maybe we did win something, we didn't win something, but whatever. Or we're looking back going, yeah, for the last 10 years, we've had 2 or 3 players in the Ballon d'Or nominees, and that's what Arsenal is now. And I want it to be that. But I don't know if every fan does deep down. Do you know what I mean? Do you get that sense as well?
Yeah, I think. Look, we all want validation.
Sorry to just to add a final thing on that. Maybe they do, but then things come up in decision making, and they'll go, "No, we can't do that." And I go, "Well, if you want to be here, we have to do it."
Look, I think at some point it's the little brother becoming the man moment. In all of us, and we're at different stages of that, and that comes with different expectations. If you don't want to be considered the little brother anymore, then you've got to make big boy decisions. But making big boy decisions means that there's big boy consequences. Are you ready to face the big boy consequences?
No,
and
George,
sometimes
I'm just a little boy. Where's my mummy?
well, there's a little bit of that, I'll be honest with you, in terms of expectations, right? And I'm with you. I think that's been the pushback. And I think until we win something, because they don't feel that we can respond until we have something concrete like that, that I am a big boy. It's like, there's, how do I put this? In every man and or woman's life, they go through a period where their parents have supported them and said, whether you want to go to college or university, that's your first decision that you begin to make, that, well, you will take your parents' advice. This is for you. This is for you in your individual moment. And then those conversations are very different when you start saying, I'm going to go pick and buy a house. And, I'm in that stage right now. And, there's some big boy consequences to that, where you can't say, hey, Dad, what do you think? Can you help me with my mortgage? I'm going to come here. Hey, Arsenal fan, can you deal with me not winning trophies and me saying, does Mikel Arteta deserve his job? After he's given me all this ability to feel proud and this ability to say how great he is and how great he's made my team. If he doesn't win, does he deserve to stay in the job? And is that you saying that you want bad for Arsenal? Meanwhile, you've looked at somebody who's done so much to help give you that confidence and that faith again, like your parents. It's difficult. It's not an easy thing to do. And that pushback about when is it too early, when is it too soon, those are things that I think every fan debates as they start transitioning from very good team to winners, to the Real Madrids of insert your destination here.
Yeah.
To become that, you've got to become something more.
And I think a lot of that's the off-field stuff, honestly. And I think that's really the thing, isn't it? It's like, it feels like Mikel's spearheaded this, but actually the reason Madrid and Bayern or whatever are where they are is it feels like you could put whoever in as the head coach, they'd still win. And or they'd still be competing. And I think that's the stage. And I think we have to win a couple of things to get there. But you're right. There's these complicated conversations that are coming down the road. 100%. The sort of the conversation that came out of that, which I'm actually interested in hearing your opinion on before we do a little preview of Spurs, is football worse now? Because people are reading the Ballon d'Or thing. I just think this is such a rubbish conversation, and I hate it when it comes up, because what we're doing is we're reading the Ballon d'Or nominees from 10 years ago, or we're looking at, how football is, from 15 years ago, whatever. We're saying, oh, it's so much better, whatever. And I just think, first and foremost, you're comparing players in your memory as to what they were in their entire career compared to someone right now, which isn't fair. It's like, it's really not fair. And you see all this nostalgia and whatever. And I saw this guy do like the top 20 strikers in the world in 2004 compared to the top 20 strikers now. I'm like, yeah, but you're comparing Henry's entire career to someone now, or you're comparing Wayne Rooney's entire career to someone now. It's not, maybe they do win, maybe they don't, but it's not fair. It's not a fair argument. And I just like technically, physically, tactically, preparation. Bro, my friend went to go see Paul Merson and Perry Groves talk about Arsenal, right? They used to get drunk before games. They went for pints before games. You cannot tell me, oh, the players were better back at... No, they weren't. Like, relatively. And also, there's that whole thing of, like, you look back and everything's better in the past and everything was more innocent. But no, we all know that isn't true, really. But I don't know. I think football is so competitive, as Mbappe would say. And I don't know. I think there's a degree of nostalgia. I think there was more stars back in the day. I will say that, in terms of individual names. But that's because the game has had to become so much more about teams, because teams are so much better. You can't have any passengers. You can't have Wes Brown. It doesn't happen. Like, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's difficult for me to say, mate, because I have to be objective. Factually, we've scored more than all these older teams
in a harder era.
In an era where there's more competition. I've come at it with a different angle, because I made a post on X, as I always do, where I normally fight, but for once I haven't. I kind of made a point.
How are the arguments going, George? Are you on?
They're always there.
He wins every time.
But I kind of reframed it. Do you think that social media has impacted the way that we view current sport achievement?
Oh, mate.
Because we're more connected to these superstars. I mean, you're talking about, okay, not to self-plug you talked and hugged Jamie Carragher and David Ornstein. Are you doing that in the 1990s?
Oh, no. Well, I'm not doing it with any of the calm that I did. Like, it's that superstar thing. Do you know what it is? It's my favorite band's a band called the 1975, and the lead singer once said this thing, and he's a bit of so he can be a bit of a weirdo, but he's a very intelligent dude, and he said, like, there's a reason there's no like stars anymore. Like, is Beyonce the only like proper celebrity that people, if someone met you, go, oh my god, that's Beyonce, like you'd have like a, oh my goodness me. And it is the accessibility thing. And he said this thing, he was like, if Michael Jackson debuted the moonwalk today, the third comment on YouTube would be, bros just walking backwards. That's what it would be. Like, it's that is what it is now. And look, there's a great leveler in that, but everyone's worst moments are brought up and everyone's pulled down to the same level. And I think there's a lot of value in that. I think there's something in the way the websites are built. You see everyone's names next to each other and whatever, and there's something in that and whatever, but that's a whole other conversation. But regardless, I do think the way media is consumed, it's not just social media, it's the aggression of the news cycle as well. Someone could score the best goal of their career and it's forgotten within about 2 weeks because the news cycle is so aggressive. So yeah, I just think if you're thinking objectively and trying to take off the spectacles, I think we all know what the answer is. But I do get it. Like when people say, like, look at these names, like, oh my god, these were, this was the era. Like, I do get it.
I just don't think that you feel like you could have ever touched them back in that day.
Yeah.
And like that's just not the case now. No. I mean, for God's sakes, we've got fan channels that are asking McKellar coaches questions. We've got Sky Sports on the overlap have a fan debate segment where people like yourself, Clive, people that we feel are everyday people in our fan base.
Oh, I'm a star, George. Excuse me.
Oh, you're a star to me.
Thanks, babe. No, I know what you mean.
But you're touching these guys, like they're within reach. That was never for me, I think, a case. And when you start to look at social media, I feel the repetitive analysis and the repetitive dissection of moments dilutes our appreciation of them.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Yeah, I think in the 90s, you look at Zidane and you look at even Beckham and all the stuff that they did in terms of creating the waves that Beckham transcended sport. I think part of the reason is because we could never talk to David Beckham. But for example, it wouldn't shock me that SDS, Sharky, some of your favorite people in the space are talking to some of the best footballers in the world.
I'm telling you,
different.
he is. He's texting Trent. I'm telling you. He told me.
Yeah. Oh, no, 100%.
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is that something that was in the 90s or in the 2000s? No, it isn't. So access, I think,
Everyone's
has really
within reach.
torn it down. So we can't put them on the same pedestal that we did.
I completely agree. I think that's a really good way to leave that there. Yeah, it's and like there's value in that. There's value in that, and there's a good aspect to that, you know. But there's also, you know, people can't be like stars, and people can't be. Yeah, it's a shame in some ways, but it's also great in others. But yeah, we can we'll leave that one there. Maybe for another day.
Let me be clear, it's amazing because it gives me a chance to do this. So
yeah, and like, you know, and that's the thing. And there is this like blending of like, you know, professional media and fan media, and that's all so interesting. I think eventually there will be a kind of the same ecosystem. I don't know. It'll go through things, but you know, that's for me, my football media rants. Before we finish, we should talk Tottenham, the Tottenham Spurs, as you would say over there in America, right? Where you live in America, in the US of A. Just a public service announcement. I don't know how many times George needs to say he's from Canada before people stop calling him the Yank. Or what do you get? You get Samir Nasri, the Yank.
I do. I see that.
What else do you get?
I get the American.
Yeah.
All euphemisms.
Does Canada count as Yank? Would you ever refer to yourself as a Yank, or is it just America?
I've heard people do, just because of the accent. Like they just group North America.
I can only just hear your accent. It's when you say like a boat, or you say that you got it's your little A, but you've actually stopped it a little bit. It's from talking to me. Sorry, mate.
It is. Because no, but the A, I notice. I do that. It's there's some dialects things, you know.
Yeah, and the sorries. Spurs. We have an issue. We don't have Rice. We don't have Marino. I was talking TDK Live. I'd love to get your take on this. I don't just want to have a surprise for the sake of a surprise to appease me because I'd be excited by looking at the lineup. But I do feel in a game like this, I'd love Mikel to shock us. I'd love Mikel because I guarantee Ange is prepping for a Kai Havertz, Jorginho, Partey midfield or something like that, or a Partey, Havertz, Ødegaard midfield. I absolutely forgot about Martin Ødegaard's existence. I guarantee he's prepping for that, or they might do something slightly different, but that's what they're going to do. Wouldn't it be amazing to just have a Trossard in the A, or have like a Waneri star or something? I would love this game, especially after the international break, a little bit of time, a little bit of space to spring a surprise. If there was a surprise, what would you want it to be? But what do you think Mikel is probably going to actually do outside of my fantasies?
If I had a surprise, what would it be? I mean, I talked about this on the other pod a little bit. I think Trossard false nine is something that I've always felt in my nerd dream, with a certain Raheem Sterling starting and a certain Calafiore at left back, with keeping the Kai Havertz at left 8. Mm-hmm. I think that collection of individuals, especially against their high line, is something that I'm interested in. Although I don't know if Jesus is in fact backed. Like if he was back, I would choose him for that role. But I think that I would look towards a false nine usage in this game. And I would look towards a little bit more security and making sure that we're attacking the width a lot more. I think that this specific team, they struggle with defending wide spaces. I really think that Tottenham have a really horrible organization about defending the space touchline. And they've also got center backs that I feel are too jumpy and they can get dragged out. And I think going from out to in is going to be the story. If we can do that successfully, I think that we kill Tottenham. I think that it's that convicted, by the way. Yeah. So that's what I would like to see. I don't know about Mikel. I think he's got a certain level of hesitancy to experiment. And I think that Mikel himself doesn't like to do things that he can't control. He's very controlling as a person. So the level of jeopardy that you can afford, I think, is only going to be one or two positions.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you want Calafiori, expect every other position to be something that you can predict.
Jorginho. Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that. And look, when there's so many uncontrollables in a football match, I do get it as a philosophy.
And in a derby as well.
Yeah. I do feel we had some luck on the transition last time. So something like a Sterling, I would be interested in. Like it just feels, I don't know, this game for some reason is just calling out to me is like, I wanted to see us do something a little bit different for some reason. But I mean, just speaking about Spurs, yeah, I agree on the centre backs. I agree on the wide spaces. I also saw, yeah, as I said, the transitional worries. I also, against them at the toilet bowl last time, I was looking at, I think Rohan pointed this out, Kai Havertz's use of the offside thing against Brighton. Did you see him point that out? Of course you did, you nerd. Like that's interesting to me, and how we push lines back, and if Kai's going to be doing that and David Raya's going to be doing that, and that could be an interesting thing against Spurs considering how high they play. I think exploiting that space, I just don't want to watch us try and break down a Spurs low block, but I don't think we would. I can't see that being that sort of game. I actually think Spurs will have quite a lot of the ball. I can't really call it. It's an interesting game, but I do want us to go outside of our comfort zone a little bit. I think we expect to go into these types of games with our nice, 68% field tilt, and we have all the touches, we have all our passes, we get our 2-0 with a second cut back, lovely, see you later. It's not going to happen against Spurs. So let's prepare for the game that we can give them, which I think is an exciting one, but might be slightly out of our comfort zone.
I think that we need to run.
That's basically what I'm saying. Yeah.
Like, I think we need to be more vertical. And I think that teams have said, okay, I'm going to block the center and I'm going to play a mid block. And this has been the way to defeat Arsenal for 8 months, right? That's what teams do. And I think that teams won't do that if you don't add runners to go over the top of them and do it more willingly. We have clearly become a team that switches more often, much to my delight, much to something that I've been calling for.
I think we're fifth.
It's an improvement from 17th.
Yeah.
So but we're more willing to go direct, right? So I want us to be willing to go direct earlier. And the only reason that you can afford to do that is if you got outlets to hit. So for me, the most trusted outlet that we've been able to do has been Kai Havertz, Martinelli. It's a discussion. Do you go Martinelli or Sterling? I think both players give you the same thing in terms of the role, slightly different in terms of maybe your trust. Right? I think Kai Havertz, for me, I think I'm ready to look at him in midfield as long as we do this false nine thing. If we're going to play him if we're going to play him as a striker, then I think our left wing needs to be somebody with more ball retention. I really feel those are some rules that I would probably pair, and it depends on Kai Havertz's use. If you're looking at Kai Havertz to give him the freedom and him being the outlet, and you can't really afford your wingers to do it. Now, the reason I don't like that is because that comes central, no matter what. And for me, Spurs have a significant issue touchline and defending touchline spaces. And so I would much rather our wingers be the ones that provide that threat, as opposed to us play off this center breaking the line kind of mentality. I really think that we need to focus on attacking them touchline and making sure that we do our best to do that. So, for me, that's what I would do. I would look at Kai Havertz and I would say, depending on if you're a striker, that requires a different type of a left winger. And then if you're a midfielder, it requires a different type of left wing. It's a little bit more of an outlet runner.
Yes, well, we will see. We'll see. You've had your hour, so that's it. Unfortunately, you have to find us on Patreon or YouTube members or whatever. Thanks, as always, for being here. Appreciate it. George and I will do probably a rewatch or some scouting later on in the week, so look out for that. Instant reaction, pods, all that good stuff. Thanks for being here, Georgie boy.
Thank you, good sir. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for watching, and thanks for keeping it Arsenal.